Installation successful. Jack, your multispectral shielding should now be more resistant to radiation. Please note, however, that contact with biomass will still drain it just as rapidly as before.
Understood. Thank you, Juno.
Of course. Shields at 95%.
Given the damage the Estrella has sustained, I would not expect even a simple system such as this to remain operational. How was that achieved?
The Estrella was built for war. Her high level of redundancy and modularity limits most damage to the compartment that sustained it. In the case of that display, it is still receiving power from micro-generators and integrated capacitors.
All within that part of the ship?
All within that hallway.
We would never even consider building something so vulnerable to the biomass.
Suffice to say, Doctor, the biomass was not a threat we anticipated. Though I'm afraid beyond that, the details are classified.
Of course they are.
Apollo, do these controls operate the door?
Correct. Unfortunately, it requires 2 operators.
Or more range?
Yes, the grid projector tool that Juno proposed could work.
I'll search the area for more cargo drones to scan. Apollo, is this the only way into the drive bay?
I'm afraid that's correct, Jack. The fuel cells are stable, but the same cannot be said of their contents. As a result, access is tightly restricted. The door can be opened, however, by using the nearby controls.
A spent biomass torpedo.
Just like every other that was left behind here. Useless for my research, unfortunately. As soon as one detonates, accessing its incubator is no longer tenable.
Apollo, can we rely on the remaining munitions to stay in place?
Affirmative. With the ship now stabilized, these warheads should remain safely stowed.
The Estrella must have seen a few battles in its day, huh?
While the Estrella's combat history is above your clearance level, Captain, I can share this. Until faced with the biomass, she was undefeated in battle.
And here I was thinking my helium harvest totals made for an impressive record.
Shields at 50%. Shields at 95%. Charging dock restored. Jack, now that we've completed optimizing your shield's radiation resistance, I'm afraid there's nothing more to be gained from the dock's data.
What's the point of an advanced network of semi-autonomous recharge stations if you can't count on them to calculate impressive optimizations for you?
I believe you are correct, Captain. The distributed computing power of the charging docks could be put to greater use.
Yes. That's precisely what I meant. Go on.
I have tasked the charging docks with developing a means for allowing Jack's shield to self-regenerate. The wealth of empirical data they have collected on recharging should prove invaluable to the process.
Then I presume additional data scans would be of value after all.
Indeed. Please continue scanning any docks you may find. The additional computing power of more active units would be advantageous as well.
Copy that.
Hell of a lot of radiation out there. Guess it's coming from the Estrella.
Correct. The Estrella's last time jump ruptured a generator, diffusing radiation throughout the region.
Thus, the radiation darkness.
Shields at 95%. Connectivity restored. This dock is now aiding in the development of your regenerative shield, Jack.
Dr. Hartman, what was your purpose in attempting to salvage the Estrella? The odds of my ship's components being compatible with yours seems unlikely.
It wasn't the hardware I was after. Your ship was the original source of the infestation. I'd hoped to find an undetonated biomass torpedo amongst the wreckage. Use it to develop a cure for all this.
I understand, Doctor. Considering my current directives, I will provide any useful data that may help in your research.
Better late than never, I suppose.
Shields at 95%. The stasis projection technology will be simpler to adapt than previously anticipated. If you scan one more cargo drone, I believe I will have enough data to complete your new tool. Data recovered. Network status connected. We're making good progress, Jack. Shields at 95%. Tool schematics complete. Please visit a fabricator to install your new tool, Jack. Most charging docks will have one nearby. Shields at 95%.
Liv, I found a part of the Kronos 2, the hull identification panel. I believe it was pulled through with us when we time jumped.
Just couldn't stand to be without us, could she? You know, I volunteered for the Kronos. No one else would touch it. Too far out. But that's exactly why I went after it. I wanted to get as far out there as I could. Fast forward a couple years and we're making that jump on the Estrella. All of a sudden there's 4 centuries between me and everything I've ever known. Can't really get much further out than that, can you?
I would suppose not.
The thing is, now that I'm actually here, all I can think about is going back home.
grip projector installed. To use your grip projector, simply point at a target. Activate the projector and direct it with your hand. Any sufficiently small piece of debris would be ideal to experiment on.
If your new tool works as intended, Jack, you should be able to access the fuel cells now.
Good. Heading to the drive bay. I'm back at the drive bay. Armed with the grip projector this time.
Great. You should be able to remove those warheads now.
Shields at 95%.
Warheads removed. Entry into the drive bay is now clear.
Copy that. Standing by.
Now heading for the fuel cells.
Great. We'll keep a working cargo drone on standby. Just look for a good fuel cell and we'll handle the rest.
Roger that.
The controls near the drive bay door may be used to gain access, Jack.
Shields at 95%.
I've gained access to the drive bay.
Wait, those pillars in the center, are those...
The Estrella's FTL drives, yes.
do they still work?
Theoretically. But unfortunately, they're of little use to us. With such a high concentration of biomass forms in this area, any attempt to remove one of the drives would prove futile.
Dr. Harlan, I'm noticing these ticks appear to be less evolved than those we've previously encountered.
Must have carried over from the last time jump. No doubt just as dangerous. I advise avoidance at all costs.
Jack, my monitoring systems are offline here. You'll need to manually inspect each fuel cell in order to determine its viability. Simply scan their data ports to get started.
Fuel cell located.
Use the data port and I'll expose the cell for visual inspection. Exposing fuel cell for your inspection, Jack. Jack, if you access the data ports beside the storage cells, I can open them to allow further examination.
Empty. I'll have to keep looking. Do we know what the biomass does specifically to an FTL drive to trigger a time jump?
I have a few theories.
As do I.
And I'm sure they're all equally preposterous.
The drive assembly looks remarkably like Dr. Harlan's FTL, if only a bit larger.
As I understand it, our drives were reverse engineered from the ones left behind on the Astrea 400 years ago. Their functionality hasn't improved since then.
Apollo, could one of these FTL drives contain a suitable replacement for the fuel cell?
Doubtful. All of these drives are likely depleted from the last jump. And even if that were not the case, I would still advise against venturing too close to those biomass swarms. If we're to leave here with a viable source of energy, it will need to be one of the fuel cells along the outer wall. Accessing fuel cell. Jack, before we remove any fuel cells, you'll first need to check their condition.
Another empty cell.
Apollo, you're sure there's a good fuel cell there?
I never said I was sure, Captain Rhodes. It's simply the most likely location on my ship to contain a viable fuel cell, if any were remaining.
Right. If any were remaining.
Exposing fuel cell for inspection.
This does not look good. These cells are all empty.
Jack, the data ports you need to access are located on the storage units running along the room's perimeter.
The units may be covered in biomass, but the techs seem to prefer the center of the room.
Apollo, what are the chances that any of these fuel cells are still full?
The fuel cells were not designed for time travel, so unfortunately the odds of viability are incalculable. Scanning all their data ports will answer your query, however. Exposing cell for visual inspection.